Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Brooke Wiley. I'm a board member at Traction. I am also a Two-Spirit native from the Colville tribe. I would like to acknowledge that I am currently residing on stolen Duwamish territory, and would like for all of you at some point, if you don't already know whose land you reside on, to find out and learn whose land you live on. You may have been hearing about Traction lately and wondering what we're all about. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of our story. Traction is short for Trans Community Action. Founded in 2019, we are a trans-led 501c3 nonprofit organization in Washington State. Our mission is to cultivate connection and visibility for transgender and gender non-binary people through community service in support of underserved communities. So far in our short history, we have produced the 2019 Emerge Gender Summit, supported the Bellevue College Immersion Program, co-presented the all-virtual Seattle Trans Pride Plus, and perhaps most significantly, we've played a key role in the LGBTQ asylum seekers immigrant/refugee coalition by providing safe housing and support for transgender refugees seeking asylum in the United States. Lately, we've been hosting a whole lot of virtual programming made by and for our community, like the program that you are seeing here tonight. So that's the action part of Traction. And we're working on so much more. I welcome you to join us. All you have to do to become a member of Traction is to join our mailing list. To learn more or to make a donation, please visit our website at tractionpnw.org. And with that, I would like to introduce you to our host for tonight, Callisto. Callisto, the floor is yours.
Good evening. I'm Callisto. Pronouns are he, ze, and they. I will be the host for this evening's Community Trans Campfire 2021 and beyond. I am very glad to have been invited this evening, and it is my honor to serve tonight as a host for four amazing panelists. I really, not to say I was snooping, whoever's shared screen is up there. I see you with the queer death care and death studies. That's my background. Some folks call me listo, which means ready in Spanish. And let's jump into some of the questions after I introduce the folks that will be with me tonight. We have, pardon me, technology, isn't it fun these days? Lynn Scott from the Lavender Rights Project, the director of Lavender Rights Project, founding member of Washington Black Trans Task Force, and Jaylen's worked as the director of human resource operations for several nonprofits and religious organizations. She's an ordained minister and regularly preaches and facilitates workshops on justice and mindfulness. It's always wonderful to see more Black trans clergy members out there in spaces that we might not otherwise feel accepted in. Jaylen's passionate about trans liberation, safe practices for self-care, decolonized labor practices, illness in the workplace. You can find more about Lavender Rights Project here, lavenderrightsproject.org, if you have any legal questions or pro bono or slide scale assistance. And she'll be here for tonight's conversation. Next, we also have Jay Banks from Thurston County. That's Olympia's Pizza Klatch, a transplant to Olympia from DC. Jay is an Afro-Latinx binary queer educator. They started TU Mason, a transport and education group during their time at George Mason University, and was influential in the university gender-neutral housing. They have their master's in early childhood education and work to implement a Black Lives Matter curriculum in their classroom while focusing on being trans and queer affirming. A big round of applause to anybody who's been managing educating through this lockdown. After teaching in those elementary schools in Southeast Washington District of Columbia, Jay decided to use their life experiences and formal education to help support LGBTQ youth with Pizza Klatch, again in Olympia, Washington. Jay is passionate about intersectionality and being a source of representation for queer youth of color. They also love traveling to new places, binge watching reality shows, and spending time with their French lop rabbit bun. We have Donato Fadowesi, the operations director at UTOPIA, Seattle. Donato was born and raised in Tafanua, American Samoa. She feels lucky to serve her cutie pie community in the Pacific Northwest. She's an avid reader, a connoisseur of boxed wine, and a favorite auntie to many nieces and nephews. Donato serves UTOPIA Seattle, soon to be UTOPIA Washington, with a strong background as an administrative professional in the warehousing and transportation industry, and is an accounting student. Having previously served 6 years on the board of directors and having served dually as a board treasurer and finance director, she is excited to use her skills to elevate the work of UTOPIA and strengthening its organizational capacity. Later this evening, we'll also be joined by Toby Hillmeyer of Gender Justice Washington, and I'd like to welcome all of those panelists to the room this evening. Let me know if I'm going too fast for the ASL interpreter, since I do freelance CART, and I know sometimes people speak too fast for me. I realize if I'm speaking too fast myself, so drop it in the chat. The first question that I have for everyone is, tell us a little bit about who you are and what your organization does if it wasn't covered in the biographies that I received.
Hi, everyone. Can I start? All right. Thank you so much. Again, my name is Donato Fadowesi, and I'm a representative of UTOPIA Seattle, soon to be UTOPIA Washington. And we help to provide wraparound services for our queer and trans Pacific Islanders. And the way that that looks like is through direct service support. So we have client-based management services where our community can connect with our direct services coordinators to be able to access resources or services that can empower them in their lives and help determine goals. So goal setting is a real thing, because as marginalized communities, we need to be able to identify what resources are available to help us get there. And so they will work one-on-one with our case managers to develop those plans. And one of the very unique ways in which we're helping to make that accessible to folks as well and cultivating trans leadership is we have a trans leadership cohort that is now within its second year. So we are working directly with 15 men and non-binary individuals to identify campaigns in which they can work collectively on that address issues around policy and help to create campaigns that can overcome those barriers. So as we're working in the second year of that program, takes some education and unlearning and recognizing what systems are at play that directly impact our lives. And they're working on developing those plans and identifying those campaigns this year. So we're really looking forward to a lot of that work happening. Thank you so much.
If it's okay, I can go next. I am Jalen Scott, Executive Director of Lavender Rights Project. As you've heard, we do really very similar to Utopia as I listen to your description, and I'll take your lead. Wraparound services for queer and trans persons in Western Washington. We have historically done legal services, but now legal services is just one arm of the services we offer to the community. Recently, we've taken leadership from the Washington Black Trans Task Force, which is very similarly, Donato is a leadership cohort within Lavender Rights Project of LRP staff. And this staff is actually leading us in terms of programming, policy, and et cetera, right? And so helping us center Black trans life and the needs of Black trans people in all of the work that we do. They are really helping us focus on intersectional violence and how violence happens at the intersection of identities. This work expands all of the work that we do at Lavender Rights Project, not just the wraparound services we provide for Black trans people, but it actually informs and helps center the rest of the work we do for the entire community. I mean, our current sort of ongoing mantra and motto is, if we get it right for Black trans people, we'll get it right for all of our clients. Yeah, that's us. And we have a legal services branch, family law, civil law. We don't do criminal law yet, but we're thinking about moving into that area. And in addition to that, if you know any Black trans people need some help, they need some rental assistance, housing assistance, and et cetera, just give us a call.
So hi, I'm Jay, and Pizza Klatch has been a nonprofit organization in Thurston County for, I hope my math is right, about 13 years. And what we do is before schools close, we would go in with a staff member and a community volunteer from the LGBTQ plus community to run support groups for LGBT students and their allies directly in the school. We bring pizza so that they can come eat with us during lunch, and they have access to food so they don't miss out. And they also have access to peer support and also just kind of like intergenerational support from other queer and trans folks in the community. So it has grown from one school in Thurston County now to 15 schools total. So that's 14 high schools and one middle school. We have lots of very supportive volunteers that help us do this really important work. And me, myself, being a facilitator advocate along with my coworkers, we are also able to add a little bit more stability. We can do one-on-ones with the students, stay a little after their lunchtime, or help connect them with other community resources in the area. So a lot of making sure students have gender affirming items if they need it, working closely with an organization in Olympia called Stonewall Youth. If they need clothing, things like that, we are who they come to. And so recently have started social time. Now our groups are all online. So that kind of adds to the general Zoom fatigue that students and I know all of us are feeling personally. So we also do social games on Friday nights. Students get to play Among Us with staff members and other students from various schools in the area. So yeah, that's what Pizza Klatch has been doing.
It's so wonderful to be on this panel with each of you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for breaking the awkward silence.
Exactly.
Pizza Club sounds awesome. In Olympia, I mean, I think we're still sometimes disconnected, even in Tacoma from Olympia. So I'm excited to be in this room with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, excited to learn about
you. This is our first time meeting, but Jalen and I had met before, and we partnered on a number of projects as well. LRP has been a huge collaborator and supporter of our legal clinic that we host every year, and it's part of our ongoing legal services.
Sorry for that
helping to amend
there. I'm back. So that y'all me moving around during the tech thing. And I have that can be for all and might have various answers is what does it mean to take care of ourselves, each other, our communities within the current political climate? And for example, that's the brink of civil war that we saw last week at Capitol, the change of administration, the continued uprising of white supremacists. What actions can your organization need to truly look after the collective
really wonderful question, Lisa. Jay, did your response?
You can go ahead. I'm good to well, I was just going to say that I know for one, the summer of 2020, for a lot of people, especially where I live, because it is a mostly white area, it was a wake-up call. But for me, it was just kind of reaffirming, the life that I've had growing up. And I personally, our organization was really shook up. And we were going through a lot of struggles. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that before I joined this organization, just as a facilitator advocate, the organization was 100% white. So people were not used to having to think about those things that this question is based off of, to think about white supremacy and all of that. So me coming into this position during the summer as the executive director, I thought the best way for us to take care of our community, take care of the students who weren't being seen before, was to be really honest about that history. So the specific history of Pizza Klatch, to be honest about where we were as people and how much we could do. And I know during that time I had to put out a letter being like, hi, I'm the new executive director, but also saying like, we're in a really a tough time where people like me are just really present. We're being kind of pushed into those positions. And so I had to say, like, first and foremost, I'm here to take care of like Black trans people, Black queer people, because we need it. And like Jen said earlier, when we're taken care of, we'll have resources to be able to take care of everybody else, but like there has to be a focus. Taking care of myself has been the more difficult thing. I think that is because I've grown up in a world where I have to take care of everybody else. So this year has been a learning process and figuring out how to take that time for myself and realizing that for me to be able to take care of my community, I really have to be in a good place. And I'm still learning. It's really hard. And everything that's been going on in 2020 and just the first couple of weeks of 2021 have really been a challenge. But I think the best thing is that there are people that I can lean on to help remind me, maybe kick me in the butt a little bit, that like, I think you should take a break and take care of yourself. So that's where I'm coming from. I'm still learning, and I rely a lot on my community to like hold me accountable of taking care of myself so that I can do the important work of taking care of everybody else, especially the youth that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
If I can piggyback a bit, I mean, it's really interesting that in response, I think the intention was I was doing a co-executive directorship a little bit before the uprising this summer, the real uprising, not the most recent. And we had been doing work. I was in HR and operations, looking at our mission and refocusing on what actually matters. Our mission said one thing about taking care of the most marginalized, but when we were able to define who that was, it helped us move forward. So in some ways, it was already planned for me to take executive directorship, and we got ourselves there at the beginning of June, right around the same time as the response, at least, to the murder of George Floyd, the brutal murder of George Floyd. But it's interesting the decision that our organization made and Pizza Klatch made, and I think some others that I've heard, is saying, okay, we're going to try to be accountable and put these Black folks in leadership. I'm curious about, Jay and Donato, how you feel about, there's a certain amount of tokenizing that happens with that, but there also is a demand there from our side that's like, put us in leadership and trust our leadership. And so for me, the difference between me being a token and a figurehead is how people follow the leadership that I provide, how people follow the leadership that Jay provides. That tells whether or not the intention was there and whether or not it was a good move on their part. And so I think that's what people need to do in response. They made a lot of commitments this summer. And I think it's time for follow through not just for, 6 months, a year, but ongoing. Let your organization completely change, let your work change, let your life change. Do the thing that you were inspired to do this summer, and don't let it die down just because the news is not paying attention to it anymore.
I love that. And I think you touched on a really important aspect too, is that are we given the trust and the space and the money to make the decisions that need to happen, right? Leading this work, we often get thrust into a number of different positions to meet the needs that our community dictates, right? And you've iterated that with the real uprising. Like, everybody was looking for how we can help to support the organizations doing the work. And here we are. Where's that support? We're put into these positions of leadership, but our communities and the folks that are really committed to helping us lead and be successful in this work, I believe really need to take putting their money where their mouth is. And that's just me being real.
No, that's real. That's real.
And I love how Patricia Mercer even commented, we cannot pour from an empty cup. And so giving ourselves the grace even to be able to look at our team and our partners in the community that's also leading this work and saying, like, we need to take care of ourselves too, right? That we can easily and most often be victims of burnout in doing this work. Do we have the time and the luxury to be able to take a step back and take care of ourselves? Is our mental health supported? Do we have all paid health care, completely employee sponsored for our associates that are leading this work? Is that something that we can think about and consider budgeting for and really put that into place? Like, let's start there. And, especially with the trans folks that are employed to do this work that we've invested in, that they're now able to access the healthcare needs that can allow them to live their most best lives, right? In the ways that they've realized for themselves. So all of these wonderful things at play, but Self-care is a real thing. And if we fail to take care of those leading and supporting this work, we can just as easily then lose them, right? Like going to other organizations or failing to tap into their most amazing like potential.
Yeah, I definitely had a I want to say like a come to Jesus moment, but I'm also not religious. But I grew up in the Baptist church, so it's within me. But I had one of those moments recently because I was able to actually take a break, and I had been on a couple of like vacations since I got the position. But it was ones where I was still working. You know, I still had my phone on, I still had my notifications on. I didn't actually take a break from work. And so I did in December, and it like being able to kind of sit and step back from my role as executive director, even my role as a facilitator, because I still engage groups, you know, supporting youth, and just like focus on myself. One, it was kind of terrifying, you know, when you don't have a bunch of different things to take your attention and to kind of block whatever you're going through. So I was like, oh gosh, all these feelings. My job is really stressful. The world is really stressful right now. And yeah, being able to step away, I realized how close I was to that burnout. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I just got here. I shouldn't be wanting to be done already. Like the work is, I'm really passionate about it, but you stop feeling that when you don't have that time to figure out what's going on with you. And I think we get so good at advocating for other people that we forget to like advocate for ourselves in those moments. We forget to like really, I know I've forgotten to ask like from my board, like ask and tell them what I need to be able to really function in this job, to ask my staff to really support me in the things that I need to do. So I feel like sometimes we can get so wrapped up in the everyday that we forget to ask for that support. We forget to like take a breath to like make sure that we're doing all right in that time. And yeah, it's difficult.
Look, well-funded, you know, I think I do get annoyed with the self-care question often because it puts the onus on me to do something for myself. And I think the way that y'all are wording it, I really appreciate, is that it is the community's responsibility to make sure that their leaders, even those who are not officially in leadership position, but that they are taken care of while they're doing the work. You know, I think about some of my friends who work for either, you know, more institutionalized nonprofits or corporations, and their vacation leave, sabbatical pay, sabbatical time, their, you know, ability to actually really step away depending on the corporation, it is higher, because if you're well staffed and well funded, then that gives you an ability to actually do those things and take care of yourself. I mean, I like the endowments. Where are the endowments for our organizations? Where are, you know, the endowments for Black and trans-led and non-binary led organizations that allow us to actually do that work? There's also this stigma. I think, you know, you look at organizing space, especially in Seattle, but all organizing space, there's a sense that you can never stop working. And there's something that's built up in the culture that says that if you stop working, you're lazy or something. And that's really colonial white supremacist stuff. It has nothing really to do with how Black folks need to be organizing, how people of color need to be organizing. But that seems to translate into the nonprofit sector. Like, I'm not actually doing my job well unless I'm working 90 hours a week, not taking breaks and burning myself out. And that's just not, it's not healthy, it's not fair. And it means I'm doing a terrible job, to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. And so we need like you said, I agree, Donato, I agree, Jay, we need the funding and we need the space and we need the ability to be able to take time off as organizers in this community, as executive directors, as leaders, and as staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really love on what you touched just there too about not being able to take that step back, because then it's deemed like, oh, you're lazy. And, you know, while this comes from like a white capitalist colonialist mentality, we're trying to work to unlearn those things too. And, it can be very easy to fall into like this trap of, well, I did or work to undo all of these things that are upheld in those predominantly white structures and corporate structures. It can be just as easily, even as communities of color, finding ourselves like stuck back in that loop, like when the next thing comes, right? So I think just the awareness alone, like, has really helped to open my eyes and my position over this last year, and how we can like work to unlearn those things, grant each other much more grace, right? And setting clear boundaries, right? Do we have boundaries? Are we setting the boundaries between our team, between our board, and between the community that we serve? And being clear about those things to ensure that we're okay. And at the end of the day, I can come back tomorrow and that I want to come back tomorrow. So yes, self-care and community care. Vern Harner.
I believe everyone's gone currently, and last just kind of spoke about the profit work for funeral service, and it is so difficult to just develop those boundaries of self-care and not work those 90-hour weeks because we feel that purpose. And the other day I told my boss I took Tuesday and Wednesday off, and I came in today because I felt that the longer I took off, I feel like I was taking a mini vacation. And I just set a boundary of we need to check in with one another. If we decide to not work that following day, that's completely fine. Ourselves into the core, and I mean, when we
Hi, everyone. This is Amy in Control Center. We're having some technical difficulties with our guest's Wi-Fi, but I'm going to just insert myself very shortly to continue the conversation. I was wondering for all of the guests, looking into 2021, how do y'all feel about what do we need to be focusing on as a community this year, and in order to really keep moving forward towards the path of liberation for all? I'm going to hand the conversation starter to Jaylin.
Oh, I knew that was going to happen. I just want to say, and so what I want to say is protecting Black trans women and femme from violence and providing resources for them. And it seems, even in saying it, it seems narrow, but I don't think it is. And I'm moving into this place where I'm not apologizing for asking people to do that, not just in their work, but in their lives, in their prayers and their contemplations about why does this problem exist. I think it's indicative of a systemic issue, a community problem. I think that, the call for Black Lives Matter, for example, to look at, and center Black trans lives and say that Black trans lives matter, and to think about organizing that centers that. I think that plays for all of us, that, this is not separate from our own work and our own goals that we're doing in our own communities, that we can center this and also think about and be better at the other work that we do. So I think I'm not going to apologize for it, and I'm not going to think that it's narrow. And I'm going to say we need to figure out how to stop the murder of Black trans women and femmes in this country, like now.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, Jalen. I also want, I feel like the idea of mutual aid and community care has been around for like marginalized folks forever, like that's how neighborhoods take care of each other. That's how like a lot of like Black folks and people of color, how they take care of each other, that communal environment. And I've seen a lot of shifting, I think, especially last year with the pandemic and everything, people really deciding like, oh, I can figure out how to take care of my community in this way, putting up a place for folks to get food, putting up, spaces where people can receive that care. The kind of minimalistic version of reparations that is happening on social media. I do think that there are structural things that need to change and need to change quickly, but it's also a system that's been alive and growing for so long in the United States that it's almost impossible to see if that's going to change. So me personally, I don't have a lot of faith in that structure. I'm kind of let's burn it down and start over again. But with that framework that you're talking about, Jalen, in mind, the idea that we need to push, like, not push, but to uplift Black trans women and femmes and think about what their needs are and build things off of that, like can build a system where we're not centering capitalism, where we're not centering racism and white supremacy and things like that, because that that is the root of our issues. The more that I've learned about myself as a queer trans person, and how the demonization of gender identity and sexuality is based in white supremacy and capitalism, and how that really affects us. I'm like, we gotta get rid of it. We gotta get rid of it. We have to start from the basis of like caring for each other and uplifting each other so that that can spread. So I'm like, burn it down. That's what 21 looks like to me. Just let's do something different,
I love that. I'm also much more of like optimist. I'm the dreamer. And like I think about all of these things that you mentioned too, like mutual aid. Like we have a framework of how we can make this a reality, but yet we fail to prioritize Black trans women and Black trans femmes. But I truly believe that like my liberation is tied to exactly that. And we need to like start putting a lot of that care there. But also understanding that for many trans women, the harsh realities of sex work further exacerbate the harm that Black trans women and Black trans femmes face. And so what can we do to decriminalize sex work? And also make sure that our sex workers are taken care of, right? So a lot of the work that we've done over this last year through COVID ties and increased funding available for sex workers who are trans and non-binary to access. So while they were left out of the economic impact payments, and other areas of support, so some not being able to claim employment or unemployment if sex work is their only form of income. Like they're still needing to work to make sure that they can keep a roof over their heads, and they're having to work through a pandemic to do so. Like, where's the support there? So let's refocus, but also like push more money and resources to where it's needed most.
Preach.
Thank you so much. Next question we have is, where do we need to be put, or let me reword that, where do we need to put pressure on the new Biden administration to push for our goal for true liberation for all? A fairly loaded question, but let's see where everyone can voice for that.
Where does it hurt most? Let's put it there. And like, I say that to say, I don't care who's in office, right? We got to put that pressure where it can be felt the most, because our community is dying. And every year, Black trans women, Black trans femmes are being killed at more higher rates than ever seen before. Like, why is this not the wake-up call? Right? Why aren't people hearing us or seeing us? Why are we continuously like just pushed to the side or ignored when our community is dying, in these vicious acts of violence? And we're being targeted for just that, for being who we are and living freely and loudly as our individual selves. OMG. Chip Phillip is laughing.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm with you. Like it was. I don't trust any administration either. like you said, you're kind of the optimist. I am full pessimism with this, and like just from where we've been and where we're going to, and it kind of feels like though this new administration is much more progressive than the old one, it's still too far behind. And I don't think that the community is going to take piecemeal change anymore, with the real uprising that happened and the presence that like specifically like Black trans women and trans femmes were making in that time, in such a dangerous time. To say like, we're here, Black trans lives matter, there needs to be something done, knowing that administration wasn't trying to do anything about it. So I'm like, I think that pressure needs to continue at the same intensity. I feel like just looking at the response to the inauguration and how a lot of folks were just so excited and like, everything's fine now. We have a guy who can like say a speech without, stumbling over his words. They feel like the work is done, but it's not. We have to go even harder. And like, shout out to all of the like organizers out there who are like on the streets, really doing that work, putting their lives on the line. We need that. We also need the folks who, consider themselves allies to really step up and to continue to put that pressure on not just the Biden administration, your local government. I know like there were some things that got kind of pushed forward in my area here, but it was also a space where people were asking me to do more labor. And I'm like, I'm tired. I'm tired. There's only so much I can provide for you because I'm also trying to provide for these youth. Like my role in this area is to like really support these young children, these teenagers who have to live through this, give them a place where they can really express themselves, they can access help. Like I'm trying to get them ready so that and so that they can withstand what's happening. But I also don't want to have to do that. I want us adults to be able to push really hard and change it so that these high schoolers that I work with and these middle schoolers don't have to do what we're doing. So I think putting that same pressure, riling things up, because that's what gets people's attention. That's what they look at, and push people in your local government to really like make those changes on that scale too, because there's only so much that they can do and only so much that they will do in the White House. So what about your local council members? How are they supporting the folks that need the most help?
I agree. Locally, I think is where we can probably see a lot more impact. But, my concern is, the things that we've had some progress in terms of housing and a number of areas, for example, with King County, City of Seattle, those areas. But, what about Jackson, Mississippi and Mobile, Alabama? Title VII, the Bostock case, looking at sort of protections for gender under civil rights, that Supreme Court case that sort of affirmed that gender identity should be considered. But the question is, there's an executive order that came out today that reaffirmed that by the Biden administration, but we need something stronger, which is like legislation that can't be reversed by another administration that comes in, that ensures that, across the country, federally, that we understand that gender identity is is part of those protections. And in addition to that, really encouraging states to pass their own laws, like the Washington law against discrimination, and encouraging them and giving them benefits or something, subsidies, whatever they need in order to encourage them to pass those protections for LGBTQ persons. There's a question for me, in the South Side of Chicago, I remember, and in LA, when everyone was really hyper-focused on violence, what they used to call Black on Black crime, which is really white society violence against the Black community. But they put money behind the federal government, and also the CDC went in and treated violence like it was an epidemic. And threw resources behind it to try to understand how to disrupt the violence. And that's the exact amount of attention and money that we need, that it's not criminal, that's not based in the criminal justice system, so that doesn't imprison more of us, but figures out how to treat it like an epidemic and disrupt it with restorative measures and healing measures in the trans community, in the queer community, in addition to those protections that I was talking about.
Yeah, and I think also, Jalen, like you mentioned, federal protections. On the federal level, we still don't have legislation that prohibits the use of the gay and trans panic defense. And Washington, I believe, just achieved this almost a year ago, after the murder of the trans teenager, Nikki Kuhnhausen in Vancouver. Right. So like even that is just new here on the local level. But like on the federal level, I believe there's more than 40 states that have yet to introduce any legislation that bans the use of the trans or gay panic defense.
I'm glad that they have an assistant health secretary who is trans, though white. But where is your working group? Where is your task force? I'm tired of nonprofit task forces. We're trying to fix everything. Where's the government's task force that comes up with recommendations for state legislation, a policy analysis, and for trans identity and inclusion? So I think that's what's needed, and that's the level of attention I'm pushing for, including, absolutely, the panic defense. I mean, do you have hope that that's actually going to happen?
I have hope in general for a better tomorrow.
I have hope in community.
Yes, that's where I'm at. I'm really focusing on the people that I have around me, because otherwise it's hard to hold on to that hope.
You can trust, right, Jay?
Yes.
You know.
What's right in front of me, you know?
I love that. It looks like they're trying to bring Callisto or Brooke back up for the next question. Oh.
Yeah, hi. Looks like Callisto is having some more technical difficulties, so that's all right. So how can we work to revision nonprofit worlds so that it can be more accessible for upcoming leadership of people of color?
If I can take a quick jab, I'm sorry if I'm talking too much. Jay, did you want to go?
No, go ahead.
I think as communities of color, as marginalized communities that have often had to overcome adversity while also combating the negative commentary of what we can or cannot achieve, has been such a reality, right? And this only further feeds into this imposter syndrome of what we tell ourselves we're capable of and what we can accomplish. So it's been such a constant struggle to recognize amazing trans leadership within our communities that are doing killer amazing things. But because of that imposter syndrome, they fear taking that great and amazing thing to the next level. And so we're trying to work with unlearning and undoing the harm imposter syndrome has forced our mouth, right? Even in a space among peers where you recognize that sometimes you can't speak up for yourself because either you don't have the right words, right? Or you might look stupid. And I think sometimes in even our nonprofit organizing, we do that to our own community. We use all these words that then disconnects with the people that we're trying to serve, and we're not meeting them where they are. And so how can we help them to overcome those unique barriers to be able to step into a position of the light and bask in the light and the glory of who they are and what they can achieve? So sorry, really deep, but in a nutshell, that's what it is for me. And I'm recognizing that I've had to overcome that as well. And I'm still working on it constantly every day. But I feel like I have an amazing support system within my fellow staff and our executive director, our board, that helps call me out on that and keep me in check.
Yeah. I was at first was going to say something different, but that you really got me with that one. I know me myself, I am still struggling with, am I right for this position? Do I know enough? Am I doing enough? Which on top of feeling a little overworked, just kind of makes me not the best because of that lack of confidence. So I definitely agree. I feel like breaking down those barriers, the idea of professionalism and what that's tied to, and how that stops people from being able to access, like you said, what they're really good at, what they can do, because they think they have to act a certain way. And I think what I'm trying to do personally in Pizza Klatch is to give space for students to be leaders. We have in the past had it where we have like youth be board members, and while that's great, it's a little above where they're at. We're not meeting them where they are. Like students would sit in on those meetings and be like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I don't know what to talk about. So I'm like, a way to still like empower youth to feel like can like impart change into the organization is to then maybe make a youth advisory board. And we haven't had the chance to do that yet because of everything that's going on in the world. But I think that's a place to start, to be able to say, you have leadership over this thing that you want to do. What do you want to bring to our organization? How can we support you in that? And I think a lot of that also comes from me being a teacher. I did teach very little ones, but you had to like give them what was appropriate for them. And if you see, oh, there's room for this person to do more, then you give them more, but you're doing it in a way that's appropriate and gives them the ability to like reach that goal rather than overwhelming them and making them feel like they're like out of place. So I think for us at Pizza Klatch is to like really cultivate a space where students can take charge of something and feel supported in taking charge of that thing and feeling like it doesn't matter if it succeeds or not. It matters the experience that you've gained through this, and that is what adds value to us as an organization. It's like being a place where you can grow and where you can learn and where you feel supported. So I think that that's my plan, at least, for Pizza Klatch, to really break down those barriers. And yeah, I saw somebody in the chat say professionalism is BS. It truly is. It's wanting us to fit into like what white supremacy wants, how they want us to act, how we're supposed to present ourselves. I can't do that. I'm sorry. I am not comfortable being dressed up all the time just to sit at my computer. I don't care. If I'm going to curse, I'm going to curse. The youth don't care. They're super excited to hear an adult curse. Some realism. That's how you connect with your community.
That's right. Mm-hmm. I don't know if we have time. I know we're getting close, but we do employment civil rights cases. So we see a lot of folks who are Black, Indigenous, POC, who face some serious discrimination at their workplaces, often places many of us would be surprised to hear. And I've wondered about this because, some of it is with executive directors and, other people that I know with organizations that I respect. There's something about human resources and the way that it's structured and taught and trained that just is inherently just vicious, and vicious for POC, for Black folks. It benefits nobody but white men. It's not that I'm saying that there are people who are in jobs that maybe they would fit better elsewhere in a different organization, company, in a different place. And it's not that I'm saying that that there's some difficulties that people have in terms of, violation of ethics. That's not the point. What happens time and time again is this just lack of empathy and compassion in the administration of work and nonprofits and in other companies. And so the stuff that y'all are talking about, I'm just hearing that you actually give a shit about the people, your students and other folk. And it's like, just actually give a shit about the person and don't let your HR policy override your just inherent innate compassion that you have. And yeah, if you got to terminate somebody, you have to let them go. But have you worked through it? Have you really understood them? Have you taken care of their needs? Have you set them up so that they can care for the trauma of being let go of a job? Do you even give a damn? We just got to do better with the way that we treat people of color in the workplace, trans folk in the workplace, non-binary people in the workplace.
Thank you, Jalen. That's my takeaway. Just give a damn. I'm going to come back to that after. Did I give a damn enough? and if I did, then I'd be at peace.
Then you did good.
There's so much in that vein that leads into our next question, but coming from an environment of being surrounded by primarily Black, trans, Indigenous, and POC, and going into another Black space, but having to answer questions about my trans identity and setting that boundary, and then realizing there's resilience, but also there's so much growth for the cis folks in those spaces to do. And that leads into this question about executive leadership longevity. For many in those executive leadership positions, especially within our marginalized communities. And specifically, if you're holding those marginalizations, is short at best and often costly. And it's definitely something that comes up. You might come on to a role under contract and you try to hold on to that so long, but sometimes there's not something we can do about that. And it impacts us physically and emotionally. So in finding leadership to step in and continue the work that you do, who is also affected by marginalization can be next to impossible because of how this nonprofit industrial complex and therefore in some instances white supremacy. What can we do to prevent burnout with both our current and future leadership? And how do we support upcoming leadership of youth, upcoming leadership of other trans folks, other BIPOC folk in this position to keep them thriving and retain them where we currently can't?
I would say to not start with thinking about retention, right? And the reason why I want to put emphasis on this is I strongly believe if we build up anyone so that they can go anywhere, absolutely anywhere, they will never leave you. So disregard retention, give focus to where it needs to be, help give the people involved in forwarding your organization's mission the time, the money, and the space to do so.
Yeah.
And when they leave, wish them all the best, because those are the people that are going to continuously talk and say all the amazing things about you and take that model of leadership that you've shown them into where they're going. And they will be that example. And then we can continuously operate from this place of, I gave a damn. Now, Sipsy.
That's it. I don't have anything to add. I'm with you on that.
I'm with you too. I also think that what gets lost in the nonprofit work, people forget that like the reason that nonprofits exist is to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. So the goal is that you're trying to put yourself out of a job because you want the problem to be solved. And I feel like a part of that complex is putting Band-Aids on a problem. And so people get tired and they want to leave because they're like, I'm tired of putting Band-Aids on it. I want to do something that there's like an end, in sight. So I feel like if we put more effort and we as like the whole like complex itself, like actually do the things that bring your mission to an end. Like, and we have these big lofty goals, very pretty words for our mission, but like, what does that actually look like? For me, it's like, I want to educate youth on different ways to take care of themselves, physically, mentally, emotionally, advocate for there to be more resources for them in the places that they live, because I don't want to have a special specific place for them to come for support. I want that to be what the norm is. So how do we get to that place where we are putting ourselves out of jobs because the problem has been solved? And I think when people can really see that like the work is to solve a problem rather than it's just work, that can add to the sense of like I have somewhere I'm going. So I don't need that retention. I'm gaining skills here. That's what this is about. I'm gaining skills and I'm solving a problem. And when that problem has been solved, I'm going to continue to support the solving of that problem, but I'm also going to do what fulfills me. Because at some point, I think folks, they don't feel fulfilled anymore. It's like, when is it going to end? And so, yeah, I'm just like, I try to like repeat that into my head when I get down, but also to like make sure, like we were talking about earlier, that you can like step away, that you can, I'm thinking about making a school policy for my little nonprofit, because just being able to take time off and like truly take time off and give space for other people to step up into that leadership, because that's like the point, you know, you are able to take a break to reset, to come back with new ideas, to enrich yourself in whatever way, but you're also allowing whoever is still there to build their leadership skills, so that you know, if you do need to move on, if it needs to say goodbye, then there's somebody who's been working to take that place. So I'm like, for me, I'm trying to figure out how do I make that happen with Pizza Klatch. Pizza Klatch is a great organization. It's been around for more than a decade. That's amazing. And we've been growing, and resources have been given to more schools, where schools want training. They want to do more. They want to do more to be able to support their students. And I'm like, yes, that's how we're going to like get to the point of solving the problem. Everybody has to be involved and invested. And hopefully, though sad to say, because I'd have to find another job, but hopefully that puts me out of a job one day, because it's then in the hands of the community, and we're all doing the work to take care of the people that needed the help from us.
Yeah. It's so wonderful. And you can take that model and go teach it somewhere else, you know, and get your coin.
Exactly.
Thank you.
All right. Trying to figure out if we have further questions, or what time would you like to carry things on till? Let me see here. If we wanted to continue to focus on I really liked what was spoken earlier about how, by Donato, about how we don't need to focus so much on retention, but if you treat the people you work with correctly in the first place, they will, you know, come in leaps and bounds. And if they decide to leave, there's no guilt. Give them that good send off, because from a trauma lens, I've always been like, what if I leave an organization? And when you leave that organization, you're like, dang, I left so many things unfinished, and we need to get away from that idea of they'll just replace me. Because as powerful, resilient leaders and growing leaders, we have things that cannot be replaced. And so many skills that only we have as individuals.
Mm-hmm. I think our organizations give us the platform to do the work that we feel called to do, right? Do this work from absolutely anywhere, if that is answering our calling. So I think that guilt is also very real, and organizations tend to do that a lot to people. Is that, you know, if you leave, blah, 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 this, or you'd be reprimanded, or like, you know, just this negative feeling of like, you shouldn't ever leave, or you're quitting, and so therefore you suck. Like that, I think that's like operating again from this professionalist, like capitalistic structure of you weren't cut out for the job. But you know, we wanna send people off with grace, whether or not that was our decision as an organization to let them go, or that they're leaving voluntarily. I think we always need to operate from that lens to give a damn. Because you never know. And, be big enough to even admit sometimes if their send-off is the decision of the organizations that this didn't work out, right? And that's okay. Maybe your next thing will work out. But if you need a recommendation, have them call, we'll, share about all of the amazing qualities that you did have or that you do have, right? Because maybe this is not the place for you, but we're gonna, support you in wherever you go.
I think just really quickly, I agree with all of this. I think organizations for executive directors, corporations, for regular employees, particularly Black employees, Indigenous employees, POC folk, they make them critical to the position. And, it's almost as if they are, yeah, it's almost as if we're put in this, if I'm going to sort of theory, like we're the overseer, you don't have real control over the thing, but you need to, I'm putting all of the decision-making and all the problems in your lap. And so what that means is, if you make a mistake, it's all on you. And there's no shared accountability, but it also means that if you want to leave, you can't, or if you need to take time off for surgery, or if you need to move things around or have someone else take accountability, you can't, because they put everything, they invest everything in this one position. So I appreciate this idea about, Donato, that you're talking about training, providing leadership for the people so that they can, it's not necessarily leadership for my organization that I'm preparing someone for. I'm just giving them leadership as a program manager, period. And right now they're working here, but they're not critical to this, to the organization. The organization is not going to fall if they leave. It's just, we're just training and providing leadership opportunities for program managers. Whomever comes or stays, that doesn't matter, but we're going to prepare them for the next job. I appreciate that.
Yeah, same. I also feel like in connection with that, for folks that do stay, creating that kind of like web of leadership. If we're talking a lot about like having things be communal and really focused on community, it's like, well, how can we figure out a way to like overlap certain things so it's not all on that one person, and we're not doing that weird whole peer thing. Like, this is like a place where there's shared leadership, everybody can have a piece of it. I still haven't figured that out, because that's kind of what we're trying to do at Klatch, is really figure out how to make things more equitable, but also in a way that makes sense and where things can still get done, because that's where it gets a little tricky. But really thinking about, like, if one piece of that puzzle falls away, moves on to something else, is everything falling apart, or are we still good?
Yeah. Well, you have a cohort to pull from.
Yeah. Yes, we do.
Wink, wink.
I see
it.
I feel like there's so much more to ask with that question, but I am going to hand it off to Brooke with Gender Justice and Traction to give us a little pass off for the night and a little bit more about Traction. It was wonderful hearing from all of you on your perspectives, and hope to see you in the future in some capacity.
Thank you, Lesno.
Oh, thank you so much, all you wonderful speakers, and to our wonderful ASL interpreters. You all made this evening possible, so thank you so much for that. I really also want to thank everyone who joined us this evening and who will join us later on and watch this program. Conversations like this are really important to have, and hopefully they will continue to develop more and grow more as 2021 2021 progresses. And if you like this program, we would like to encourage you to please make a donation to our organization. We are a mostly volunteer-led organization, and we cannot do programs like this or any sort of other event without your donations. So we really would like your help with that. If you're interested in being a member, or if you're interested in just making a donation, please go to www.tractionpnw.org. So again, thank you all